Between 2600 and 1900 BCE, cities across South Asia supported over 5 million people, a sprawling urban system called the mature Indus Valley Civilization. Their territory spanned 425,000 square miles. To put that in perspective, the Indus civilization was physically larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. These people were obsessed with standardization. They used uniform brick sizes for every building and a shared binary weight system for trade. Yet, unlike their neighbors, they built no massive royal palaces and no grand military fortifications. Instead, they prioritized civic engineering. They built the world's first citywide drainage channels and public baths. In their archaeological record, weapons are almost entirely absent, suggesting a society that chose to invest in hygiene rather than hardware. The result was a highly centralized, cooperative network that functioned for 7 centuries without the need for a standing army or a ruling elite. But around 1900 BCE, this stability vanished. The city grids decayed, the maintenance of the drains stopped, and the population simply left. For decades, archaeologists followed the theory of Mortimer Wheeler. He claimed this utopia was murdered, destroyed by a violent invasion of Aryan hordes. Wheeler pointed to ancient texts and a small group of skeletons found in the streets of Mohenjo-daro as proof of a final bloody massacre. But modern analysis has dismantled that claim. The skeletons actually belong to different chronological eras, and the cities lack the distinctive layers of ash and destruction that follow a war. If not killed by an invading army, we must look for a different force, one capable of emptying entire cities without firing a single arrow. The true culprit wasn't a foreign general, but a massive, centuries-long environmental shift that turned the landscape against its inhabitants. This chart shows insolation, the amount of solar energy the Northern Hemisphere receives. After peaking 7,000 years ago, that energy began a steady decline. That drop weakened the monsoons. Over generations, the summer rains that fueled the region's agriculture grew lighter and more unpredictable. Eventually, the glacier-fed rivers supporting these megacities began to retreat. The sacred Gagar-Hakra system, once the civilization's lifeblood, started to dry up completely. Because these cities were built entirely on the surplus of river-fed farming, the disappearing water snapped the backbone of their food supply. While the rivers failed, the ground itself shifted. Tectonic activity along the Makran coast pushed the Earth's crust upward. This uplift pushed the shoreline dramatically outward, leaving bustling Indus seaports stranded on dry land, some ending up 50 kilometers away from the ocean. This geological shift instantly severed the maritime trade routes that connected the Indus people to Mesopotamia. With no water for crops and no sea access, massive cities in the west began to depopulate. But the people didn't vanish. They migrated east into the Ganga-Yamuna river plains and south into Gujarat, establishing new, smaller settlements. Their movement was a calculated survival strategy. They abandoned unsustainable urban centers to find more reliable water sources. This transition is often called a collapse, but it's more accurately described as deurbanization, a shift from high-density cities to a localized rural lifestyle. They traded their standardized brick platforms for wattle and daub huts. They replaced the massive great baths with small-scale village wells. We know their culture survived because their pottery did. They continued producing traditional ochre-colored vessels, carrying their artistic identity to new villages. They also developed new styles, like painted gray ware. These artifacts represent cultural adaptation and evolution, not a sudden break in the population. Becoming a decentralized agricultural society wasn't a step backward. It was a resilient response to a planet that no longer supported big city life. The Indus civilization wasn't dismantled by Aryan swords. It was undone by weakening monsoons, shifting tectonic plates, and drying rivers. The resulting migration east and south didn't end the story. It transformed it, directly creating the cultural landscape that would become the Vedic period. The fall of the Indus wasn't a sudden apocalypse. It was a masterful act of human resilience, people leaving behind dying cities to ensure their culture survived in a changing world.